the bones are not formed correctly, and as a result of that, I'm short.
Amid the dazzling capital of cinema, where the spotlight seems to favor only the flawlessly crafted faces, there exist stars who have been pushed into the depths of tragedy by their very own physical imperfections. There was once an actor praised as having the face of an angel. Yet after an unexpected accident, his acting career came to an end, and he spiraled into depression and self-destruction. There was a sultry actress who seemed utterly invincible, only to become a laughingstock before the entire world collapsing at the very height of her glory. And there were others still carrying within themselves such horrifying deformities that in utter despair, they repeatedly sought death. So, in the end, which Hollywood stars are hiding the most bizarre body secrets? And what did they do to confront such cruel realities? Let us begin with the first name, Harry Styles. One Harry Styles, the young man with 4 nipples who left fans stunned. If you think Harry Styles can only captivate the world with his sweet voice and rebellious fashion sense, then you are gravely mistaken. In 2017, during a live interview at BBC Radio 1 in London, the entire studio seemed to explode when Harry casually admitted that his body actually has 4 nipples. At first, host Nick Grimshaw thought he was joking, until Harry burst into laughter and firmly declared, "I'm not making this up, I really do have 4 nipples." Immediately afterward, major outlets such as The Guardian, New York Post, and even Daily Mail simultaneously ran eye-catching headlines, Harry Styles and the secret that made the whole world blush. Within just a few hours, the news spread across Twitter, attracting over 2 million shares. Harry's name once again dominated global coverage, but this time not because of a new hit song, rather, because of a shocking detail about his body. Throughout the conversation, Harry maintained an irresistibly humorous yet confident demeanor. He recalled, "I've been used to it since my school days at Holmes Chapel in Cheshire. Back then, my friends used to call me a 4-eyed freak. No, wait, actually a 4-nippled freak. But honestly, I never felt ashamed. I've always considered it a strange little gift that nature gave me alone." The entire room erupted in laughter, while female fans screamed and tossed roses onto the stage as though they were cheering for a hero who had just revealed an earth-shattering secret. What made the moment even more surprising was that right afterward, a famous British cosmetic doctor, Dr. Hilary Jones, guest on Good Morning Britain, confirmed. This condition is called supernumerary nipples. It occurs in only about 1.7% of the global population, but it is rare to see anyone embrace it with such pride as Harry does. His statement ignited even more frenzy online as the combination of a global sex symbol and a rare body condition seemed like an unbelievable paradox. The story didn't end there. In 2019, paparazzi in Los Angeles captured Harry strolling leisurely on Malibu Beach. The bright California sunlight hit his chest, directly revealing all 4 nipples and once again sending social media into a frenzy. The photo spread at lightning speed, landing in Twitter's global trending list, and even made its way to the Ellen DeGeneres show. Ellen playfully teased, "Maybe you're gonna need 4 bras to cover up that little secret of yours." Harry doubled over with laughter while the live audience roared with applause. All of this shows that even with a body that is different, Harry Styles has managed to turn what might have been considered a flaw into a distinctive mark that makes the world admire him even more. But the question arises, is he the only Hollywood star with such a bizarre physical feature? The answer is certainly no. Just a few years later, a beauty who once topped FHM's list of the sexiest woman in the world in 2008 shook the global entertainment industry when she revealed a hand with a thumb that fans dubbed the Monster Thumb. And that person was none other than Megan Fox. To Megan Fox, the sultry beauty with a peculiar thumb. In June 2009, at the MTV Movie Awards in Los Angeles, under the non-stop flashes of cameras, HD lenses captured Megan's hand, showing a thumb that was unusually broad and short. In just one night, the phrase "Megan Fox Weird Thumb" shot straight to the #1 spot on Google Trends in the US, even surpassing news of Michael Jackson's emergency hospitalization at that time. On July 1, 2009, Daily Mail splashed across its front page. The sultry goddess of Transformers has a bizarre thumb. Meanwhile, People magazine in the US rushed to publish an entire medical feature explaining that this was a condition called brachydactyly type D, commonly referred to as clubbed thumb or toe thumb. Notably, Beverly Hills plastic surgeon Dr. Robert Ray, when speaking to ABC News, emphasized, "This condition is extremely rare and often causes patients insecurity. But with Megan, it almost seems to have become part of her brand identity." On The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Megan candidly admitted, "When I was little, I hated my hands, and my friends used to call me a defective doll. But then I realized it's exactly this difference that made me the Megan Fox the whole world knows today." That statement immediately went viral on Twitter, with thousands of fans even creating the hashtag #BritiSexyThumb to cheer on their idol. It didn't stop there. A veteran photographer who had worked with her on promotional posters for Transformers 2 revealed in Vanity Fair, "Many times the crew had to be extremely careful with angles and even resorted to photoshopping her hands to avoid controversy. But the truth always finds a way to show through the lens. In fact, during a 2011 live stream on MTV when a fan suddenly asked about her thumb, Megan simply smiled and raised her hand in front of millions of online viewers as if declaring, 'I'm proud of my imperfection.'" 3. Andy Garcia, the chilling secret behind the Cuban actor's left shoulder. The next name on the list is Andy Garcia. In the 1993 biography, Cinematic Lives author James Parrish recorded testimony from Garcia's own family at birth. Andy had a large mass on his left shoulder that contained both bone and skin, essentially the remains of an undeveloped twin. Nurses at the hospital at the time even whispered and called the baby El Niño Misterioso, the mysterious child of Havana. Just days after being born, Andy was rushed into emergency surgery. Records later archived at Los Angeles County Hospital confirm that the operation was successful, but it left a deep scar etched into his body. For many years, Andy always wore long-sleeved shirts, even in the scorching heat of Miami, to avoid the curious stares of others. In an interview with Vanity Fair, he admitted with a choked voice, "There were times I wondered what my life would have been like if that sibling had lived. But eventually I learned to accept it and turn it into an inner strength." By 2001, NBC News aired a special documentary on Hollywood stars' body secrets, in which Andy Garcia was mentioned as living proof of resilience in overcoming congenital defects. American audiences were stunned to learn that one of the most handsome and debonair actors on the silver screen had once been marked by such a haunting condition. From a Cuban boy born amid his island's political turmoil, Andy Garcia rose to become one of Hollywood's most powerful Latino figures. Yet, while Andy managed to turn a congenital burden into strength, many other stars had to face physical alterations caused by the very spotlight and beauty pressures of Hollywood. And the one who drew the most public attention was Patricia Heaton, the actress, who boldly spoke about her cosmetic surgeries right on the Oprah Winfrey Show. 4. Patricia Heaton. When the stage lights could not hide the scars. American audiences have long been familiar with Patricia Heaton's warm smile and witty voice in the legendary series Everybody Loves Raymond. Yet, behind that dazzling spotlight lies a truth few people know: she once endured a haunting struggle with her body after giving birth to 4 children in succession. In an exclusive interview with People in 2002, Patricia for the first time publicly revealed a secret that left all of Hollywood stunned. She had undergone multiple cosmetic surgeries to correct the deformities of her chest and abdomen. Without embellishment, she spoke with a trembling voice. There are days when I stand in front of the mirror looking at the tangled scars, and I ask myself whether anyone could ever find me attractive again. But then I realize that those scars are the proof of the 4 little angels I brought into this world. That heartfelt confession immediately sent shockwaves through public opinion. Major newspapers from the Washington Post to the Los Angeles Times simultaneously reported on it, praising her courage for breaking through the facade of perfection that Hollywood often imposes on women. The climax came in 2003 when Patricia appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show. In front of millions of television viewers, she calmly pointed to the parts of her body that had been reshaped by surgery and firmly declared, "I am not ashamed." This is the real story of a mother, not of a goddess. The entire studio fell silent for a few seconds before erupting in thunderous applause mixed with tears. That moment turned Patricia into a symbol of authenticity in Hollywood, a place where people often hide Photoshop and cover up every imperfection. But if her story brought compassion and a touch of humanity, the next figure plunged Hollywood into a nightmare. That was Montgomery Clift. 5. Montgomery Clift, the man ashamed of his own angelic face. In the early 1950s, when A Place in the Sun was released, Montgomery Clift was celebrated as Hollywood's new treasure. Life magazine called him the most beautiful man in America, while The New Yorker wrote, "Just one glance from Monty is enough to stir the silver screen." He was the perfect icon, angelic beauty, melancholy eyes, and a romantic charm that made the whole world look up to him. But everything collapsed on the night of May 12, 1956. After a party at Elizabeth Taylor's Beverly Hills mansion, Clift drove away in his blue Cadillac under a pouring rain. Only minutes later, the horrifying sound of metal colliding echoed across Benedict Canyon. His car had slammed into a telephone pole. Elizabeth rushed out in panic and witnessed a scene that haunted her for life. Monty's face drenched in blood, teeth shattered, facial bones crushed. Taylor, acting on instinct, thrust her hand into his mouth to pull out his tongue, preventing him from choking to death. The next morning, the Los Angeles Times ran the headline, "Montgomery Clift narrowly escapes death." But the line that the press didn't print, the one whispered among audiences, was, "That angelic face is gone forever." After the accident, Clift left the hospital with a crooked cheekbone, a jaw twisted to one side, and a smile that had disappeared. Fans who once idolized his beauty now had to face a completely different Monty, a man carrying the permanent marks of tragedy on his face. Even worse, Clift himself could never forgive himself. Friends recalled how he would stand in front of the mirror for hours and then break down in tears. On the set of The Misfits in 1961, director John Huston sighed. "Monty isn't acting anymore, he's just reliving his accident in front of the camera." Critic Bosley Crowther of The New York Times once wrote, "On Monty's face, the light of a star has gone out. What remains is only the darkness of a tormented soul." From a beauty icon, Clift became a symbol of self-destruction, drowning in alcohol, painkillers, and endless nightmares. Audiences felt both pity and fear. In just a blink, a flawless leading man could turn into the shadow of himself. Hollywood called it the slowest fall in the history of cinema, and Monty, once an angelic face, became a warning for an entire generation. Yet, while Clift's tragedy was written across his face, the next figure shocked Hollywood with a secret he managed to conceal his entire life. Few could have imagined that the king of the silver screen, Clark Gable, the man who stole millions of hearts in Gone with the Wind, lived with a shocking truth about his teeth. 6. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood and the lifelong torment of false teeth. When Clark Gable's name is mentioned, audiences instantly recall Rhett Butler, the dashing rogue of Gone with the Wind, 1939, with the dazzling smile that was once considered the epitome of masculinity for an entire generation. Yet few knew that behind that smile lay a silent tragedy that forced the king of Hollywood to live in shame all his life. From his 20s, Gable suffered from severe periodontitis, a gum disease that advanced so quickly it destroyed nearly all his natural teeth within just a few years. In 1933, at the peak of his career, he was forced to have most of his teeth removed and replaced with a custom set of dentures crafted by a renowned Beverly Hills dentist. At the time, the Los Angeles Examiner leaked the shocking news Clark Gable, the matinee idol of Hollywood, actually relies on false teeth to maintain his smile. The disease left lasting consequences. In later years, Gable constantly battled severe halitosis caused by bacterial infection in his gums, to the point that rumors spread claiming that actress Vivien Leigh, his co-star in Gone with the Wind, had once complained to director Victor Fleming. It's hard to shoot kissing scenes with Clark when it feels like he's carrying a chemical factory in his mouth. MGM quickly squashed the rumor, but it lived on as a haunting legend among fans. His co-star Joan Crawford also revealed in an interview with Variety Clark was charming, but the moment his dentures loosened, he would panic. During kissing scenes, he often whispered to his partners, "Be gentle, don't knock my teeth out." It was both funny and heartbreaking. When Clark Gable passed away in 1960, the New York Times in its obituary bluntly wrote, "Few would have guessed that the most handsome man in Hollywood, the symbol of strength and perfection, lived his entire life dependent on a set of false teeth." The story of Gable laid bare a harsh reality. Even the icons of masculinity could collapse under the weight of an unspoken illness. But while Gable lived with lifelong insecurity, the next figure amazed the world by turning a rare medical condition into one of the most irresistible weapons of allure ever seen on the silver screen. That woman was Elizabeth Taylor. 7. Elizabeth Taylor, the enigmatic violet eyes and the fateful double eyelashes. Throughout the 20th century, Hollywood produced countless screen sirens, but only one woman managed to blur the line between reality and illusion in the eyes of the world: Elizabeth Taylor. When she appeared as Cleopatra in 1963, the entire set fell into stunned silence. Time once wrote Taylor's violet eyes are not merely a color, they are a weapon capable of disarming every gaze. Yet behind those mesmerizing eyes lay a medical secret that stirred controversy for decades. Elizabeth suffered from dystichiasis, an extremely rare genetic condition that gave her 2 rows of eyelashes. Renowned ophthalmologist Dr. Richard Townes, in a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1962, asserted, "Normally this condition causes irritation and can even lead to blindness. But in Elizabeth Taylor's case, it produced a visual effect of such allure that it seemed almost unreal. In other words, a congenital abnormality that could have destroyed anyone's career instead helped transform her into an eternal symbol of beauty. However, that gift of fate was not always pleasant. A production assistant on the set of Cleopatra revealed to the Los Angeles Times, "During long shoots, Liz's eyes would turn bloodshot from the overly thick lashes, but she never let it show on camera. Only when the director yelled cut would she exhale softly and press something cold against them." Behind the veil of mystery, Elizabeth was still a woman silently enduring pain in order to preserve her perfection on screen. In a 1985 interview, when asked if she had a secret to maintaining her seemingly timeless beauty, Elizabeth simply smiled, her violet eyes glimmering under the lights. "I was born that way. Perhaps God wanted me to bring a little more frivolity into this world." That gentle reply made the room burst into laughter, but it also left a profound silence, for everyone understood that her difference was not merely luck, but destiny. If Elizabeth Taylor turned a rare medical anomaly into a weapon of irresistible allure, then in stark contrast, another leading man transformed a wound from his youth into a trademark that made him one of the most unique icons of the silver screen. That man was Humphrey Bogart. 8 Humphrey Bogart, The Fateful Wound and the Legend of the Silver Screen. According to U.S. Navy records during World War I, Bogart was injured when a splinter from a warship's door struck his mouth, tearing his upper lip and leaving a permanent scar. Other rumors claimed he had been stabbed in a bar fight in New York. Regardless of the truth, the result was a crooked smile and a hoarse voice burdens that once made him fear he would never be trusted with a leading role. In reality, during his early years on Broadway, many stage directors dismissed him because they believed his voice was too difficult to understand. In a personal diary, one former colleague noted Bogart would often sit alone chain-smoking, muttering that he would never escape the fate of being just an extra. Ironically, it was precisely that wound which gave him a face unlike anyone else, ultimately making Bogart the emblematic figure of film noir. Critic Richard Corliss later wrote in Time, "If Bogart hadn't had that crooked mouth and gravelly voice, Hollywood would have lost its toughest icon." Yet few spoke of the darker consequences. Bogart was a heavy drinker, partly to numb his sense of inadequacy. His signature hoarse voice, combined with smoking up to 4 packs of cigarettes a day, led to a diagnosis of esophageal cancer in 1956, the very illness that claimed his life only a year later. One could say that the very trait that made him a legend also became the cause of his tragic end. Bogart never hid his flaws, but those close to him knew he wrestled with them internally. Before his death at a small gathering in Los Angeles, he confided to friends, "This mouth gave me the whole world, and it also took everything away from me." 9. Barbara Stanwyck, the secret scar that haunted the queen of film noir her entire life. Behind the icy beauty she projected in Double Indemnity 1944, few could have imagined that Barbara Stanwyck carried with her a deep-rooted trauma that never left her. At just 4 years old, in the cramped Brooklyn apartment where she grew up, little Ruby Stevens Stanwyck's birth name fell into a burning coal stove. The delicate skin on her left thigh was badly scorched, leaving a massive burn that prompted doctors at the time to warn, "This child may be crippled for life." Her family even prepared themselves for the possibility that their daughter would need crutches forever. Though she eventually regained the ability to walk normally, the long scar stretching across nearly half her thigh never disappeared. It became a shadow haunting Stanwyck throughout her career. In a rare 1937 interview with Photoplay, she admitted with a trembling voice, "Every time I look in the mirror, I don't see a star, I see a poor little girl with a wrinkled scar. I live in fear that the audience will find out." On set, Stanwyck always demanded modest costumes, avoiding short skirts whenever possible. Rumors swirled in Paramount's backlots that she once lashed out at a director who accidentally planned a camera angle panning down to her legs. Some co-stars recounted how on one occasion, while she was changing, the scar was exposed, causing the entire crew to freeze before quickly pretending not to notice, so as not to hurt her. Yet it was that very insecurity that fueled Stanwyck's intense inner strength. She poured it all into her eyes, her voice, her performances, so that audiences forgot about her physical imperfections. Critic Pauline Kael once wrote in The New Yorker, "Whenever Barbara appeared, you felt as though she was fighting destiny itself. Perhaps it was that scar that turned her into a warrior on screen." But the cruel truth was that Stanwyck never truly escaped her pain. A close friend revealed in memoirs, even as the queen of film noir, Barbara never once swam in a public pool. She was terrified that someone would see the scar and whisper behind her back. Stanwyck transformed a childhood burn that nearly destroyed her life into the strength that helped her conquer Hollywood. But unlike her, a male star of the same era chose to flaunt his birthmark on his face, turning it into one of the most famous symbols of masculinity. That man was Kirk Douglas, with the deep cleft in his chin that became the emblem of an entire generation. 10. Kirk Douglas, the deep cleft. Chin that became a trademark of masculinity. Few could have imagined that the legendary hero of Spartacus once grew up burdened by shame and endless mockery. Born in 1916 in New York to a poor Jewish immigrant family, young Kirk Douglas endured cruel taunts from an early age. His peers branded him with biting nicknames like Cracked Chin or a face fractured like broken bricks. In his memoirs, Douglas himself admitted, "I used to hide in the school restroom for hours just to cry because I couldn't bear to face the mocking stares." What lay behind that ridicule was a medical reality. Douglas's distinct cleft chin was in fact the result of a congenital deformity of the jawbone. In his youth, doctors advised his parents to consider plastic surgery, but the family was far too poor to afford it. And so that flawed imprint followed Douglas for the rest of his life. In his early years trying to break into Hollywood, Douglas was repeatedly sidelined. Directors dismissed him as having a face too rugged and unsuited for the romantic hero archetype. One director even bluntly declared, "Your chin looks like a bomb fracture. Audiences will never accept that." The humiliation only fueled Douglas, driving him to pour every ounce of energy into acting, determined to prove his worth beyond appearances. Then, fate reversed course. In 1960, during Spartacus, when Douglas raised his sword and thundered the line, "I am Spartacus," that cleft chin etched itself into the history of cinema. Audiences around the globe no longer saw it as a strange crack, but as a symbol of toughness, masculinity, and indomitable spirit. Variety headlined, "A scar gifted by fate turns Douglas into an immortal leading man." Stanley Kubrick himself admitted, "Without that chin, Spartacus might never have become an icon." Yet behind the glory, Kirk Douglas still carried his private pain. His son, Michael Douglas, once revealed in a 60 Minutes interview, "My father always projected confidence, but I knew he hated looking in the mirror. He used to say the chin made him famous, but it also made him feel he could never truly be handsome." Kirk Douglas transformed a congenital imperfection into a signature of masculine allure. But his story also exposes the fragile boundary between insecurity and legend. And then, Hollywood would face an even harsher tragedy. A man born with half his face paralyzed, his speech slurred, deemed unfit to ever act in films. Yet that very defect gave birth to an immortal Rocky Balboa. That man was none other than Sylvester Stallone, a living testament that wounds can forge superheroes. 11. Sylvester Stallone, half a paralyzed face and a childhood, branded as a loser. On July 6, 1946, in Hell's Kitchen, the gritty, poverty-stricken neighborhood of New York, a difficult birth forever altered the destiny of a child and the history of Hollywood. In the frantic moment, doctors used forceps to pull the baby from his mother's womb. A single slip caused permanent damage to the infant's facial nerve. The devastating result? The left side of his face drooped, his lower lip pulled sharply to one side, and his stiffened tongue made clear speech nearly impossible. That child was Sylvester Stallone. His childhood was a relentless torment. The local kids mocked him mercilessly, calling him Syl, Mumble the stammering Syl. Once during a poetry reading in class, Stallone broke into tears midway as the entire class erupted in laughter. A teacher coldly declared, "With that mouth, you'll never read a script, never set foot on a stage." Those words carved themselves into his memory like a scar haunting his early life. It wasn't only his speech. His distorted appearance caused him to be rejected countless times at auditions. Studios laughed in his face, telling him Hollywood audiences only want perfect faces, not a crooked mouth and a dragging voice. Desperate, he worked as a waiter, guarded a movie theater, and at one point even sold his beloved dog because he couldn't afford food. Amid the depths of humiliation, Stallone turned to writing. He hammered at his typewriter with manic determination, and in just 3 days, the script for Rocky was born. The story of a downtrodden loser who dares to rise and fight was nothing less than Stallone's own life mirrored on the page. And when Rocky premiered in 1976, America erupted. People weren't just watching a film, they were watching Stallone himself with his crooked face and heavy voice living proof that flaws cannot kill dreams. Critic Roger Ebert wrote in the Chicago Sun-Times, "Rocky is Stallone, and Stallone is Rocky." Without that paralyzed face and that drawn-out speech, we would never have had a legend. From a child branded a born loser, Sylvester Stallone rose to become an immortal symbol of resilience and hope. Yet Hollywood's destiny never ceased etching strange marks upon the faces of its legends. And one of the most haunting marks lay on Harrison Ford's chin, a scar from an accident that nearly cost him his life before he became Indiana Jones and Han Solo beloved worldwide. 12 Harrison Ford, the fatal scar. That nearly took Indiana Jones's life. On screen, Harrison Ford was always the indestructible hero Han Solo piloting ships across galaxies, Indiana Jones escaping deadly tombs. But in real life, he once faced a brush with death that chilled all of Hollywood. In 1964, Ford was still an unknown actor spending his days auditioning and his nights working as a carpenter to pay rent. That fateful night on his way back from a job site, his car skidded and slammed headfirst into a concrete pole. The impact shattered the windshield, slashing a deep gash from his chin down his neck. Eyewitnesses recounted in the Los Angeles Herald blood gushed like a fountain, and he lay motionless as if dead on the spot. At UCLA Medical Center, doctors spent hours stitching the wound. Ford barely survived massive blood loss, while friends braced for the possibility that his face would be permanently disfigured. During his recovery, he lived in dread the face he once hoped to bring to the silver screen was now torn and sewn back together with crude stitches. Years later, he confessed on Inside the Actors Studio. "I looked in the mirror and thought, my career is over. I'll forever be just a carpenter with an ugly, scarred face." In his early auditions, some directors even mocked him as the trench chin, dismissing his look as too rough for a romantic lead. But fate had its irony. The very scar made audiences believe in the rugged, reckless, and dangerous aura of Indiana Jones and Han Solo. It became living proof that he wasn't just a hero on screen, but a man who had already stared death in the face off-screen. That scar on his chin became iconic, but for Ford it remained a constant reminder that he lived only because of a second chance. And Hollywood, as if guided by destiny, always knew how to turn personal tragedies into immortal allure. Yet not every physical mark comes from an accident. Sometimes from birth itself, an unusual feature can predetermine a fate bound for legend. And among them, none stunned the world more than the case of David Bowie. 13's David Bowie, eyes like they came from another planet. David Bowie's gaze never resembled that of anyone else. One eye shone a brilliant blue while the other was dark and shadowed, as if they belonged to two entirely different beings. Yet behind those seemingly mystical eyes lay a truth far less romantic. In 1962, at just 15 years old, Bowie was caught in a schoolyard fight at Bromley Technical High School. A sharp punch from his close friend George Underwood severely damaged the pupil of his left eye. Bowie collapsed to the ground, his eye filled with blood. Doctors fought for hours to save it, but the final outcome was that his left pupil remained permanently dilated, never able to contract again. Bowie later recalled, "I thought I was going to go blind. Those dark months in the hospital changed me forever." That injury set him apart from his peers. Friends mocked him, and his parents feared their son would never live a normal life. But Bowie turned that tragedy into a defining mark of his identity. In 1972, when he transformed into Ziggy Stardust, those alien eyes blazed under the stage lights, leaving thousands of London concertgoers stunned into silence. Michael Watts of Melody Maker exclaimed, "Bowie is no longer just a singer. He is a being from another universe, and his eyes are the undeniable proof." From then on, his extraordinary eyes became legendary, carrying David Bowie beyond the label of a rock star and elevating him into a global cultural icon, half man, half supernatural myth. Perhaps it was that injury at 15 that shaped an artist's portrait so unique no one could ever replicate it. Hollywood has always had a way of crafting legends from the unusual, but not every difference is cloaked in mystery. Sometimes it startles the world and makes it laugh. 14. Whoopi Goldberg, the movie star with no eyebrows. On The Graham Norton Show, Whoopi Goldberg once candidly revealed that when she was very young, she shaved off all her eyebrows because she didn't like the way they looked messy on my face. The strange part was, they never grew back. Many might consider that a beauty disaster, but for Whoopi, it became her signature look. The biggest shock came at the 1991 Oscars, when she stepped onto the stage radiant to receive her golden statue for Ghost. Among faces polished with perfect makeup under the unforgiving close-up cameras, audiences immediately noticed Whoopi had absolutely no eyebrows. The next day, the Los Angeles Times quipped, "In Hollywood, people spend millions to perfect their brows." Whoopi. She skipped them entirely and still walked away with an Oscar. Even in the moment of being most scrutinized, Whoopi managed to shine. In an interview afterward, she responded with her trademark humor. "People ask me why I don't have eyebrows. I tell them because I don't need them to raise when I'm surprised. I've got my whole face for that." Her words sent audiences roaring with laughter, while the press had to admit that only Whoopi Goldberg could turn a flaw into an untouchable trademark. What made her beloved was not only her talent, but also her absolute confidence in herself. In a world where stars often go to great lengths to conceal imperfections, Whoopi boldly displayed her difference and turned it into strength. However, Hollywood is not only filled with charming laughter like that of Whoopi Goldberg. On the opposite end, another woman more powerful, wealthier, and scarred by deep wounds, both physical and emotional, once moved millions of viewers to tears. That woman was Oprah Winfrey. 15. Oprah Winfrey, from an insecure girl to the powerful queen of television. Born in 1954 in rural Mississippi, Oprah grew up in a ramshackle wooden house wearing clothes sewn from potato sacks. She was constantly ridiculed by classmates for her chubby frame, dark skin, and acne-scarred face. The ugliest, blackest girl in the class, that was the cruel nickname they gave her. An even greater trauma struck during her teenage years when Oprah was abused by a family member, an ordeal she only dared to reveal many years later on The Oprah Winfrey Show. Fighting back tears, she admitted, "I used to hate my body because it made me feel dirty, unworthy of love." That confession broadcast in 1993 left millions of viewers in tears as they recognized in Oprah a painful truth few dared to speak aloud. Her body became a source of torment. Her weight fluctuated drastically, sometimes obese, other times gaunt from extreme diets. Many entertainment magazines mocked her mercilessly, even printing her photos with headlines like "Oprah from TV Queen to Weight Disaster." Yet instead of collapsing, Oprah turned that struggle into strength. She laid it all bare on television, allowing audiences to see the real Oprah with her wounds, failures, and her resilience to rise each time she fell. That raw honesty made her a true icon, not a flawless goddess, but a flesh and blood human being, imperfect yet immensely strong. From a girl who once lived in shame of her body, Oprah rose to become the queen of television, the most powerful black woman in the world, capable of making an entire nation pause to listen. And from Oprah, we learn this. Sometimes the scars of body and soul are exactly what make a person truly great. In fact, Hollywood has seen many stars like her, those who do not hide their marks, but instead transform them into their signature. Singer Seal is one of the most striking examples. 16. Seal, a face full of scars and the pain hidden behind an angelic voice. If Oprah earned the admiration of the world for her courage in confronting her body image struggles, then Seal's story is even more haunting. His face, marked by deep scars etched across his cheeks and temples, once left the entire music industry stunned into silence. Few realized that this was not a stylistic choice, but the cruel aftermath of systemic lupus erythematosus, a rare autoimmune disease that had tormented him since his teenage years in London. As a child, Seal was often the target of brutal bullying in his neighborhood. On one occasion, an entire group surrounded him, hurling stones and shouting, "Scarface freak, you don't deserve to live among humans." Those venomous words seared into his memory, and more than once young Seal found himself standing on the banks of the Thames contemplating ending it all. In an interview with Rolling Stone, he admitted, "I once believed that no one could ever love a face like this. There were times I just wanted to disappear." That confession sent chills around the world, for behind the angelic voice that sang "Kiss from a Rose" lay a suffocatingly dark childhood. The torment was not only emotional. Lupus repeatedly ravaged Seal's body as well. At times, he was hospitalized frequently due to skin inflammation and high fevers. Doctors even warned him that he could lose his eyesight if the disease worsened. Yet, instead of hiding his scarred face through surgery or makeup, Seal chose to confront it head-on. He walked onto the stage proudly, allowing the spotlight to illuminate every scar, transforming them into marks of destiny that could never be erased. The irony is that those very scars became the feature that made him extraordinary. Millions of female fans from Europe to America fell in love with Seal, not for a flawless appearance, but for his strength, his soulful voice, and his commanding presence. Seal proved that sometimes what is considered ugly can be transformed into an immortal emblem of allure. But while Seal carried the scars of illness on his face, another action star possessed a body that seemed almost superhuman. Yet hidden within it were psychological shadows of frightening intensity. That man was Jean-Claude Van Damme. 17, Jean-Claude Van Damme, a body of steel but a mind as fragile as glass. Born in 1960 in Brussels, Belgium, Van Damme grew up in poverty and was bullied so relentlessly that he spent hours hiding away in the gym to harden his body. Karate, ballet, bodybuilding all became his refuge, a remedy that transformed a frail boy into an unstoppable machine of muscle. When he arrived in Hollywood, the iconic splits and kicks in Bloodsport and Kickboxer turned Van Damme into a global superstar, a symbol of masculinity in the 1990s. But that was only the glittering exterior. Inside, he lived in a psychological hell. In 1997, Van Damme was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The illness swung his moods like a pendulum, one day soaring with confidence, the next plummeting into despair and suicidal thoughts. In a shocking 2007 interview with ABC News, Van Damme broke down in tears. "I can defeat anyone in the ring, but I can't defeat my own mind. Some mornings, I wake up thinking I'm a god, and by night, I'm holding a gun, thinking about pulling the trigger on myself." That confession stunned audiences. The muscular hero of the big screen revealed himself as a fragile soul bleeding inside. Van Damme's downfall was not due to illness alone. He spiraled into cocaine, alcohol, and uncontrollable bouts of violence. In 1999, Los Angeles police recorded an incident where he smashed up a hotel room screaming through the night like a man unhinged. His marriages crumbled one after another, and the press labeled him the man with a body of steel but a shattered heart. Yet, much like the heroes he once portrayed, Van Damme rose again from the wreckage multiple times. He quit drugs, returned to the film set, and turned his life into a never-ending battle not against enemies on screen, but against the demons hidden deep within his own mind. 18, Steven Tyler, a voice of steel in a fragile body, haunted by addictions. From the moment he was born, Tyler carried two congenital abnormalities: one foot with fused toes and vocal cords so thin that doctors in Boston warned his parents, If this child keeps screaming like that, his voice will be gone before he turns 30. Instead of avoiding the risk, Stephen charged headlong into it. He screamed, he howled, he pushed his lungs and throat to the limit, creating that piercing, razor-edged sound that fans would call the demon of screamin'. The price was devastating. In 2006, during a concert in Florida, Tyler's voice suddenly gave out. He clutched his throat, collapsed before tens of thousands of fans, and was rushed into emergency surgery. Doctors had to patch vocal cords torn apart like worn fabric. Yet only a year later, Stephen returned to the stage fully aware that every time he opened his mouth to sing, he was gambling his voice against death. But the torment of his abnormal body and shredded voice was not the only hell he faced. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Tyler was consumed by a relentless addiction to drugs and alcohol. On 60 Minutes, he openly confessed, "I blew more than $20 million on drugs. I woke up in rooms covered in blood with no memory of what I had done. I know I've nearly died dozens of times." That admission shocked America, for one of the greatest voices in rock had admitted to destroying himself piece by piece. Yet Hollywood has never only produced rebellious souls like Tyler. Alongside the blood-soaked screams and endless addictions, there also existed the polar opposite discipline like steel balance and an unshakable sense of purpose, as if born to be a heroic icon. And the brightest name in that image was Denzel Washington. 19. Denzel Washington, the flawless man who nearly lost an entire hand. In the eyes of millions of viewers, Denzel Washington has always appeared as Hollywood's ideal man, calm, disciplined, untouched by scandal, untouched by drugs or alcohol. He is the face that makes people believe in the existence of the perfect hero. Yet behind that flawless image lies a little-known truth: Denzel's body once nearly faced permanent disability because of nothing more than a tiny fracture in his finger. As a teenager in New York, Denzel was passionate about basketball. During a street game, he fell hard and snapped the little finger on his right hand. What seemed at first to be a minor injury quickly turned into something far more serious. The bone healed out of place, forming a grotesquely bent joint that almost pierced into the palm. Doctors at Mount Vernon Hospital even warned his mother at the time, if the infection spreads, the boy could lose his entire hand. He narrowly escaped the danger, but the finger never returned to normal. Even to this day, whenever Denzel clenches his hand or directs on set, observant audiences can clearly see the crooked little finger bent sharply to one side as if it doesn't belong to his body. Denzel himself once bitterly admitted on The Tonight Show, "I thought I would have to give up acting because who would ever want to see an actor with a deformed hand? But then I learned to laugh at it." Strangely enough, rather than destroying his career, that injury became a detail that added depth to his characters. Tony Scott once revealed, when shooting Man on Fire, "I asked Denzel to keep the bent hand visible in the frame. It made Creasy look rougher, more real, so much so that audiences believed he had truly lived through life and death battles." From what seemed like a useless finger, Denzel Washington transformed it into a mark of his own, a reminder that even the so-called perfect man still carries his cracks within. Yet, if Denzel merely revealed a crooked finger, Hollywood has another face far more haunting. Joaquin Phoenix, the Oscar-winning star of Joker, entered cinema with a scar etched across his lip, a medical mystery that left audiences around the globe both stunned and endlessly curious. 20. Joaquin Phoenix, the scar of destiny and a lifetime of darkness. Hollywood has no shortage of stars with unique marks on their bodies, but none has left such a chilling impression as Joaquin Phoenix. His face is split by a long scar running from nose to lip, leading the public to believe it was the result of a botched cleft palate surgery. But the truth is, even more unsettling, Joaquin was born with it. As a child, Joaquin grew up in poverty within a family once entangled in the extremist cult Children of God. where children were neglected and even exploited. The boy with the deformed face became a laughingstock, branded by his peers with the cruel nickname the Split-Lip Kid. Joaquin once confessed in a therapy session, "I thought I was a defective product, a joke from God. I couldn't even look in the mirror because I saw a freak staring back." But the most devastating tragedy struck in 1993. His older brother, River Phoenix, Hollywood's young idol, collapsed and died of a drug overdose right before Joaquin's eyes at the Viper Room. It was Joaquin himself who, trembling, called 911, crying out in desperation, "My brother is dying. Please save my brother." That call was recorded and has since remained one of the most heartbreaking moments in Hollywood history. From then on, Joaquin spiraled into chronic depression, sleeplessness, and dependence on tranquilizers. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Joaquin admitted, "I hated this scar, hated this face. I thought about ending it all so many times. If it weren't for cinema, I might not still be alive to tell this story." Those words sent shivers through the public because behind the golden Oscar statue for Joker was a soul that had repeatedly stood at the brink of death. Hollywood once labeled Joaquin Phoenix as the eccentric actor, the madman, the misfit. Yet it was precisely this abnormality that shaped him into an artist unlike any other. From Walk the Line to Joker, Joaquin did more than act. He dissected pain, exposed madness, and turned every physical and emotional scar into art. Joaquin Phoenix stands as undeniable proof that sometimes it is flaws, wounds, and the deepest shadows of the mind that give birth to immortal legends. Hollywood may glitter with lights, but beneath the glow lies blood, tears, and souls that can never fully heal. Hollywood may dazzle with brilliance, yet behind those glamorous lights are imperfections, scars, and even tragedies that few have the courage to confront. And it is precisely these that create legends, flesh and blood people, imperfect yet eternal in the memory of audiences. And what about you? Which star on this list surprised you the most? And do you know of any other Hollywood figures who carry strange body secrets? Leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss other shocking stories about the world of Hollywood. See you in the next video.